Well, welcome to Unity of Metairie. My name is Martinez, and before I begin, I'd just like to always mention that if you like what you hear in this video and other videos on our channel, I ask you to please hit that like button and subscribe. We're trying to build up our presence so we can continue to talk about love and acceptance and willingness to accept and everyone and respect everyone and all beliefs. My talk today is another one inspired by what's going on in our country right now. I came across this quote a couple of months back, and it really hit me. It was said by Steven Weinberg, who is a Nobel Prize laureate in physics. And he said, "With or without religion, good people can behave well, and bad people can do evil. But for good people to do evil, that takes religion." Now, I need to say up front that my talk today is not against religion, because many people find solace in religion. They find groups that they can identify with their personal belief, and they can grow in that belief. As long as the religion is what is called a well-formed religion, which was defined by Muhammad as any religion that has belief in the divine and teaches love and compassion. And for me, that is my only litmus test for religion. Mainly the last part, does it teach love and forgiveness? But what we're seeing today in Christian nationalism is a form of Christianity that isn't teaching love and compassion. In fact, we're seeing the opposite. When I decide, I need to look back. Because just to say today, oh, religion and politics mixing together, what's wrong with that? We need to look at history. As an ancient Greek historian once said, and his name escapes me, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. In the earliest days of the so-called church, people were simply following the teachings of Jesus. They were interpreting his teaching, trying to live them out in their daily lives, at the same time being persecuted by the Roman Empire. And then Constantine comes along, and he, they say, converts to Christianity, but he's trying to unify again the Roman Empire. And he sees Christianity as maybe a means in order to do that. So right away we see religion and politics beginning to mix together. And he tells the bishops, there's too much division within Christianity. There's too many different beliefs. And for Christianity to be the unifying force in the Roman Empire, we need you all to get together and figure out what you believe in. Together, in agreement. So they got together, a couple of councils, and that's when the Christian church, or way Reformation came, the Catholic Church began to be formed with the idea of Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, all the other stuff that Christians began to believe in. But at the same time, they condemned anybody who believed anything different than what they were stating as the unification, the one faith, the one dogma of the Christian church. Two of the main became heresies. Heresy simply means those who disagree with us. We're right, they're wrong. It was Gnosticism, which I've talked about before, that sense of wisdom. We can find our own wisdom and our own way to God. And the Unitarians, who did not believe in Trinity. Not only were they condemned, there were a lot of executions that took place. So from the very beginning, in the earliest forms of the church, becoming an established religion within the Roman Empire, it's merged with politics, and some very bad things began to happen. Just because someone believed differently, they were condemned. Go a few centuries later, and we have the Crusades. Again, a very combination of religion and politics, of the kings in Europe knowing that their people wanted to make pilgrimages to the land where Jesus was born and lived and died and resurrected. How dare these heathens, Muslims, how dare these heathens take over the Holy Land? And thus we had a number of crusades of Europeans going to that area, to Palestine, and causing a war, because how dare those heathens desecrate the sacred land that Jesus walked on. Again, when you get that mixture of politics and religion, not so nice things happen. And then when religion tries to regain power through what they're teaching and telling people they have to believe, again, throughout history, if people disagree, they're condemned. And to me, a classic example of that is Galileo Galilei. How dare he say that the sun doesn't revolve around the earth, that the earth is not the center of the universe. God created the earth, put us on it, gave us dominion over it, therefore it is the center of the universe. Galileo said, no, it's not. We kind of go around the sun. So he's excommunicated because his view could have weakened the hold of the church that it had at that time on science, because of the power of being able to rule and being the number one. Again, as soon as that blend of politics and religion, bad things happen. In Wiccan circles, a time that is remembered and honored is called the Burning Times. This was a time, an era from the Dark Ages, and unfortunately even as far as the 19th century. Mainly women were executed because they were labeled witches. Which, by the way, is a heresy, because the false notion that a witch has to worship and give their soul to Satan goes against Christianity. Therefore, they're a heretic. Therefore, we have the right to execute them because they're not of us. Usually, they were burned at the stake, except Massachusetts and Salem, they were hung. One of the root causes of why this began to happen was that, by the way, the word witch comes from the word meaning wise woman. Women passed on one to another the traditional healing methods of using herbs and other things, where the mainstream men were moving more to scientific medicine, and this contradicted it. Therefore, it had to be wrong. And anyone who practiced traditional medicine, and we're still having that discussion and conflict today between modern medicine and traditional medicine, they began to be called witches and were executed. Because religion isn't about power. Politics is. And so when they mix, religion becomes about power, control, and everything else. The next one to me is one of the worst chapters in Christian history. And every time I see the word, I always think of Monty Python going, no one ever expects the Inquisition. The Inquisition was a very, very, very dark time. People were put on trial because their faith differed from the norm. It was a judicial procedure and later an institution that became the office of the Inquisitor that was established by the papacy and by secular governments to combat heresy. Again, heresy is someone who disagrees with us because we're right, they're wrong. Beginning in the 12th century and continuing for hundreds of years, Inquisition is infamous for the severity of its tortures and its persecution of Jews and Muslims and those who were labeled heretics. Its worst manifestation was in Spain, where even today the patron saint of Spain is Saint James, the killer of Moors. The Moors were those from North Africa who emigrated to the Mediterranean coast, and they were Muslim. Where the Spanish Inquisition was a dominant force for more than 200 years, resulting in some 32,000 executions. And one of the ways of executing was they would have this big, heavy wooden cross that they would slam into somebody's head. The symbol of Christianity. Again, religion and politics make a very, very bad combination. This is why for the beginning of our country, James Madison, one of the founding fathers, wrote, "The purpose of separation of church and state is to keep forever from these shores the ceaseless strife that has soaked the soil of Europe with blood for centuries." That was the founding fathers' main belief. They wanted to create a country where this would not happen, where religion and politics was forever separate. And we see many results that the Constitution, that no law should be First Amendment, no law should be established based on the establishment of any religion. We even see some of that in the IRS regulations, which, by the way, I believe is being violated by a lot of people. But we here at Union Metairie, we're a church, a not-for-profit. And one of the regulations in being a religious not-for-profit is we cannot endorse any one candidate. If we ran ads for, like when I was a Catholic priest, we had a bulletin, and one of the persons there running for the city council requested they put an ad in our bulletin. I had to tell him he can't, because if we accepted your ad, we'd have to accept ad from any politician who wanted to put in an ad, whether we believe with them or not. So it's all or none. And unfortunately, we see a lot of churches endorsing. But that's why that rule is there. It's, again, that separation of church and state. This, as an individual, I can decide who to vote for based on my personal beliefs. But that's as far as it should go. It's a personal choice for me. But as a leader in a church, for me to say, you need to vote for this person, that to me crosses the line. And it's just not in Christianity that we see this. We see this especially today in Islam, where the concept of jihad has been abducted by terrorists. Let me take a little aside and explain what jihad is. There are two jihads, the greater jihad and the lesser jihad. The greater jihad is that personal battle we all experience in our life as we're fighting good and evil, as we're trying to become a better person, as we go to a therapist to get over the traumas we had as a child. That personal growth of developing into a fully fulfilled, loving human being. And the fight that we have to do in order to get there. That's the greater jihad. The lesser jihad is defending ourselves if we're attacked from an outside group. But the lesser jihad is very clear when it says, you cannot harm non-combatants. But in the terrorist movement, they have taken the religion of Islam and incorporated it into their politics. And their jihad now can blow up innocent people. Again, another example, when religion and politics merge. Very bad things can happen. And that is why Christian nationalism scares me. Because it is a blend of religion and politics, where Christianity has been usurped. Just the name Christianity, just the name Christ. Because when we see what they're proclaiming, it totally goes against what Jesus taught. Jesus taught us to love everyone, to care for the sick, to be welcoming strangers, to take, for example, to take care of the sick. We're not doing that in this country. We have people who can't afford medical help. For a while, before my wife and I got Social Security and Medicare, my wife had insurance because you have to have insurance. But she couldn't afford like a $4,000 deductible. But she had to spend $4,000 before the insurance would pay anything. But yet, this idea that this is a Christian country founded on Christianity, we need to remember the words of James Madison. Thomas Jefferson said the same thing, and so does the First Amendment. Because we're already seeing people who claim to be Christian speaking hate against immigrants, against the LGBTQ plus community, and anybody else who is different and disagrees with us. It's dangerous. Because if we look at history, eventually many, many, many people will be hurt, if not killed. Because history does repeat itself unless we do something to stop it. In the Gospel of Mark, which many believe was the first gospel that was written, that's why it has no birth narrative at all. Jesus is quoted saying, and he said this to the Jewish leaders, but, let me go back, I forgot one. I skipped the Holocaust.
That's a big one.
That's a big one. Again, religion and politics, and the religion behind it is based on the Gospel of John, where John says over and over that Jesus' murderers were the Jews. So if the Jews killed Jesus, then they're evil, and thus we know what happened. So Jesus said, you have a fine way of rejecting the commandments of God in order to keep your tradition. So what happens when politics and religion meet? Politics becomes the source of power. And the religion is corrupted and twisted to fit the politics of power. And we are seeing that happening today. That's why those of us who believe in love must reject this movement of gaining power. Joseph Ratzinger is a theologian that I studied a good bit way back in the 70s. He's the one who became, Cardinal Ratzinger became Pope Benedict. He wrote, this was back in the 70s, in a book called Introduction to Christianity, the highest power is demonstrated as the calm willingness to completely renounce all power. And we are shown that it is powerful not through force, but only through the freedom of love, which even when it is rejected is stronger than the exultant powers of earthly violence. And that's my gauge. When anyone comes out and says, Jesus taught this or that, or we as Christians need to do this, I just ask one question. Is that statement based in love? And if it's not, and I personally reject it, and realize that every time it is not, it's because religion and politics have merged together. I also believe that's why today, because so much religion is now connecting with politics and all, that over the last 30 years, the percentage of people who claim to be religious is getting less and less and less and less. More and more people are saying, no, I don't belong to any religion. What those surveys don't show is how many of those people, like us in here, are spiritual, who seek love in their life, who follow some teaching, be that of Yeshu, Jesus, the Buddha, some of the Hindu teachings, whatever, but are seeking to live a life of love and not a life of fear, which leads to hate, violence, seeking of power. To me, that is where the positive will live and continue to grow. And those of us who see the danger in this merging of religion and politics, our response just needs to be simple. To love. To live a life of love. We can't control what happens. We all have our one little vote that I encourage everyone to go out and use. But whatever the majority picks, we have no power over that. The only power we have is the power of love. And to keep loving, no matter what happens. Hopefully, love will prevail. That is my hope, my prayer, is that people will choose love over hate. But we need to do that in our own lives. We need to say, no matter what, I'm going to live a life based in love. And make my decisions based in love. Because I truly believe love eventually conquers all, as Joseph Ratzinger alluded to. Even if it's rejected, love is more powerful than anything else. So, just continue to love. It's easier said than done, but we need to strive for that. Amen. Blessed be. Namaste.